What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the BREWtally Speaking Podcast. I am one of your hosts, John, and with me initially when I did this was Dan, but for some fucking reason the audio got deleted when I uploaded this or something, so I'm going to quickly do an intro. This episode's guest is Ray Hawthorne of North Kingsley, whose Volume 1 EP is out now. This is a fun chat where I kind of got to explore more of my hip-hop interests, something that I would like to do more of, and maybe will down the road if we can ever get some of those kind of people on the show. But the interesting thing is I was expecting it to be a predominantly hip-hop based chat, and found out that Ray basically is a big screamo hardcore kid. So I guess it goes to prove the point, you can't always judge a book by its cover. Going to keep this short because I want to get back to my Lions football game. First, weekend of pro football back in first weekend of sports, basically, with football back going on, college football the day before. So going to keep this this intro short, and come hang out with us on Wednesday on our Facebook Live thing. We have Phil Labonte of All That Remains joining us. It's going to be a lot of fun. You never know what we're going to say or what's going to happen, so come and hang out with us. 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 Central Standard Time. And we'll talk to you on the other side of this chat.
Nice shirt.
Thank you. I have a weird fascination, with Wu-Tang shirts and with the mashups of the Joy Division shirts.
Oh, yeah?
So yesterday I was wearing, coincidentally, I didn't realize this until I put this on and my wife made a comment about wearing another Wu-Tang shirt. She was like, weren't you wearing, your Dr. Seuss Wu-Tang shirt that Alex Party did? Like the one-off he did where he basically made the, it's, I'm trying to think of what it says, Wu-Tang Clan ain't nothing to fuck with, and it's a big, giant fuzzy Wu-Tang symbol.
That's awesome.
Pretty sweet. It's been interesting to see some knockoff bootlegs of that shit. But I always feel kind of weird because on my co-host podcast at the end of the episodes, they're always like, "What are you listening to this week?" And typically, I think we're going to be doing one this weekend. They asked me to come back on. We're going to be talking about the Acacia Strain, which is a band I really love. But it's I think as of right now, if I had to go based off my album of the week, I think it's going to be TLC's. Basically I've been listening to The Greatest Hits, but I would probably say it's going to be their Crazy Sexy Cool record. Because I've just been finding so much in headphones, just little nuances to the songs and such where I'm like, fuck, man, I didn't realize there's this thing going on. Or on Digging on You, which has been my go-to, if I play that, I'm on that song at least an hour. Just repeat. And I just started noticing in the beginning part of before the first verse kicks in, that basically toward right at the end of the pre-verse section of it, they I think it's Babyface that made that beat or produced it. There's these swells going on.
Yeah.
I've never noticed them, and they only appear there. I don't think I've caught them anywhere else in the song. So it's really kind of cool that they did something that one time, and it's so faint and for probably for maybe 2 seconds. But it's when you catch it, you're like, oh, that's so cool.
For sure.
I've been noticing a lot of shit that even kind of going on about listening back to old TLC and just kind of being it's so weird how, in the beginning I felt it was just a cluttered chaos of what they were. You'd always have the rapping part. So here comes Left Eye with her rapping part, or T-Boz kind of doing her thing, and then Chili doing a lot of the singing of the hooks and so forth. And then really Crazy Sexy Cool kind of slowed it down and was okay, this is kind of a T-Boz vehicle. She's kind of got the voice. Chili sings the hooks and the bridges. And you can hear Left Eye a lot, really, in the background on the vocal harmonies and so forth. And it's just there's so much nuance to what's going on there. And I think Babyface really did a great job of producing that record. But then what's interesting is even going to fan mail and Dallas Austin, who did a lot of that stuff and brought in a lot of live instrumentation. So the guitars on Unpretty and stuff like that. There's just a lot of cool stuff going on those records and layers of vocal harmonies on a lot of their stuff. So
nice.
So here I am, this metal dude, and I'm so I've been listening to a lot of hip hop. Yesterday when I was waiting for you, I think I made it most of the way through Stillmatic, and was listening to that.
Oh.
So because of your line, and we'll get to it, but actually, I'll leave this in, and we'll just fucking go from here. But because your line when I was listening to the Volume 1, you got that line in there where you're like, fuck, I was yelling, fuck Jay-Z, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, all right. So you were on the Nas side, like the Nas Hov beef. Like, okay, I see where you were at, you know?
Yeah.
And
there's a couple people that have brought up, they're like, what's with that Jay-Z diss? And I'm like, it's not really a Jay-Z diss. I'm more just referencing Ether.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But, you know, obviously Ether's a better song. I'll say that.
What's interesting about it, though, and I don't have a lot of friends who are big into hip-hop, so it's always kind of hard to reference that era of hip-hop, like when I was going in high school. But, like, Ether came out first, right?
Yeah. Ether came out first.
So how did he have the sample that they basically were using on Blueprint? Because the Blueprint wasn't out, and I don't think the song that he clapped back on Nas on was out at that point either. So I always wondered, how did he have basically reference a song?
Well, like, you made it a hot line, I made it a hot song.
Yeah.
He had that. Now I'm all messed up on my timeline.
Well, and that's the thing is, like, because on Blueprint, he's basically talking about Uchiwali, where they did that, like, big collaborative thing with, and I can't remember the group off the top of my head, but I know that was, like, the thing, like, you know, like you said, the line you said of, you know, you had a hot line, I made it a hot song, and blah, 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 and you're like, okay. But then even, I don't know, because part of me is still, like, and maybe it's because one of my favorite Unplugged records is that Roots, or not the Roots, that Jay-Z Unplugged, because the Roots are on it.
Yeah.
And just like the little nuances that they add to that. So like the fact that, you know, when they did that Door sample on the Unplugged, the use of that Door sample on that song, I'm always like, God, that's so fucking creative. Like to use a really obscure, not an obscure song and not an obscure band, but I think for most hip hop people, that's not a band you would probably think of to use as a sample. You know, same with like Michael McDonald on Regulators. Like, people probably aren't listening to fucking Michael McDonald.
For sure, man.
So, anyway, all of that aside, I have the pleasure of talking to Ray Hawthorne, vocalist of North Kingsley. They just dropped Volume 1. And the video for Die for the Pick actually just came out a few days ago as of when we're chatting. It's been interesting to see what parts of the songs people are vibing with, you know, like reading the YouTube comments and so forth. You know, like some people are like, oh, I really like this guitar riff. The music is interesting. Some people, it's, you know, like they're vibing on the lyrics. Something that kind of stuck out right away to me, and I kept listening back to that part to see if it was me and what I was picking up on, but it was almost like this Wu-Tang RZA-esque drop of just like the sample that you guys were using kind of in that, like the vocal, and I was like, God, that's such like a 36 Chambers kind of style, like drop everything out for a second then come back in. Like, I don't know if that was like an intentional thing or something you guys have even talked about, but it was just kind of interesting how much old school hip hop is kind of woven in between all of this.
Yeah, so we've never made it a point to specifically do that, but we're influenced by so many different things, right? So like with you earlier, where you're like, oh, it's kind of weird. I'm listening to TLC all the time, but I'm this metal guy. Like, it's the same for me. Like, all week I've been listening to the new Misery Signals album. You know what I mean? Like, it's so good. I love that band. They're dope. I was stoked the new album came out. It felt like out of left field for me. I don't know if I'm just not plugged in anymore, but I was just like, this is awesome. New Misery Signals. Shavo has worked with RZA in the past. So obviously there's a lot of hip hop influence that he has. And then Sorrow, who does like the majority of the production and stuff, he absolutely loves all this old school hip hop stuff and a lot of what's going on in like the Los Angeles underground scene. So it's a culmination of all those styles when we really just kind of sit there and figure out like, how can we make this sound the best, and we'll go through it over and over and over again. So like part where it would drop out and sound sort of Wu-Tang like, guaranteed that's something that Shavo heard. Not whether or not he knows that he's doing a Wu-Tang thing, he knows like, oh, this is the way to go. You know what I mean?
It was kind of interesting because I believe, based on some of your lyrics of talking about being things that are happening in Jersey and East Coast stuff, I would assume you're from the East Coast. I think you're living out in LA now.
Yeah.
Okay.
New Jersey, I moved out here like 10 years ago.
Okay. So sort of this, I've been out here in Michigan a lot longer, but I'm originally from Delaware, so I have a lot of East Coast things. But it's kind of interesting because like when I moved out here in the Midwest in like 95, 96, it was kind of interesting to see the difference in culture out here, because like I grew up in, you know, I went to a school where it was mixed, and as such, you know, I'm getting a lot of people who's like older brothers and stuff are like, yo, if you gotta check out Aaliyah, here's this band, you know, here's some Nas, here's Biggie, here's this dude Jay-Z coming up, and then kind of trickling over, like here's some Tupac and things like that, Boys to Men, kind of that West Coast swing kind of stuff going on as well. And then coming out here in the Midwest, and one of the first things that I was shown that I was like, I don't know what the fuck this is, but it's definitely your own thing out here, was ICP. And I was like, this is weird.
Oh, man.
But what's been kind of interesting and kind of the vibe too is obviously the two different styles and coasts. Like, I've been out west a couple of times, and everyone's just kind of really chill and laid back. And I feel like East Coasters are more like on the grind and hustling, and it's about doing something and moving on to the next thing. And so something that was kind of interesting, and I don't know the age difference between you and like Shabo or any of the other dudes, but wondering if when kind of putting this project together, was it hard maybe to meld some of your influences, you being from the East Coast and them being from the West Coast, and kind of trying to put the styles together?
So I think ultimately that worked out to our benefit, but there definitely was a long period of time where we were just trying to figure out how to make it work. We've been working on this project for about 2 years now. And there was a good period of time where Shavo and Sarah would be working on beats. I would be trying to do some vocal stuff over it, and it would be like, all right, that's kind of cool, but this isn't really necessarily working. You know what I mean? And then that just sort of made me want to try harder and harder and harder. Eventually, we got to a point where we were all really happy with what we were doing. And I think the reason why it does come out that way, though, is specifically because of that mix of styles, right? So like Shavo and Saro are both from West Coast. Saro was born in Pasadena. Shavo grew up on North Kingsley Street in Hollywood. That's where the name came from. And back where I'm from, I mean, people were listening to pretty much everything. It's really strange. Like there's so many people that were just like, we only listen to country music, and there's so many people that are like, we only listen to Chingy. But like I was in the, I was like a scene kid back in the day. So I used to listen to System, obviously, but I used to listen to all these like underground, like Misery Signals or like Chiodos and like Scary Kids, Scaring Kids and shit like that. Bright Eyes. So from a lyrical standpoint, I always just resonated with shit that matters to me. Right. Like there's a lot of good music out right now that's good from like a melody standpoint, but it's a lot of just like repetitive bullshit words. I don't want to like call anyone out, and I like that stuff. Don't get me wrong. Like I'll listen to Future all the time because it gets you amped, like it puts you in a mood. But for me personally, I really want to say something if I'm going to take the time to rap, because like even you saying like, oh, you were listening to Stillmatic and all that, like those are bars. Yeah. Like that's actual bars. Like that's stuff that means something. So,
well, I even think, I think it was. It's kind of hard when you just listen to the 3 songs on repeat and they just kind of all start blending together. Like even to the point where I thought maybe the intro melodies that are going on to start the EP, I started wondering if I was noticing them at the end too, so it kind of creates like a bookend, or if I had just, because it was just on a constant loop, that I was creating something that really wasn't there. But there was actually, and so as such, I don't remember exactly which song it was, but I feel like, I want to say it was Shotgun, that sort of had a one mic kind of vibe, where it's like you're kind of going really quiet on your verse, and the music is kind of a little bit louder.
Yeah. On the pre-chorus and Shotguns, we sort of overall we intentionally mixed that so that the vocals were a tad bit lower than the actual than they normally would be. At least that's what I wanted, being that like it's kind of like a high energy song. And I remember on specifically like In Utero with Nirvana, like they made a point of just being like, you know what, these vocals are going to be lower in the mix because it's heavy and like fuck everybody. You know what I mean? So I was like, there's a lot of stuff on Shotguns that I'm saying that I'm really passionate about, but at the same time, I kind of wanted to have that intensity. So I'm like, if someone has to listen a little bit closer to hear what I'm saying, that's fine with me. Like, I don't want it to be so clear that I'm out here yelling on top of what sounds like a smaller beat. You know what I mean? Like, I think it should all be. So that's a little bit of an intentional thing. I definitely wasn't like going for one mic, but I totally get that comparison for sure.
That's actually what started me back on, because I was listening to the EP and I was like, God, this part just reminds me of like this structure kind of reminds me of one mic. And then I was like, I haven't listened to Stillmatic in a while. So like threw that on and got lost in that, which it's so crazy, like kind of thinking back to that record. Cause like, I remember when that came out, cause God's Son had a couple good hits, but like really that was like the return of like non-commercial Nas. So it was like one of those where you're like, Jesus Christ, this record is just heavy.
Yeah.
Kind of speaking about, bars and lyrics and so forth, like, a lot of metaphors and puns are being laced throughout this 3-song EP. So kind of as a fan of hip hop in general and people having something to say, written language and so forth, you're, what is the line? Slithering, littering, cigarette butts, they huffing and puffing. I was just like, I was like, holy shit. I was like, that's a great reference to Harry Potter. But then I was even like, indirectly, you're still saying something within that reference, kind of speaking a little bit of a social commentary of sorts. And I feel like Harry Potter kind of does that a little bit at times too, having not really read the books, but just kind of what I've inferred from interviews and so forth from the writer. Do you tend to write, because it feels like a lot of this is kind of more in the moment. So I was kind of wondering if you do more of a freestyle to kind of get a cadence maybe and then build around it, or are you kind of a hook artist first, like kind of come up with a hook and then work your way around it, or how do you come to your lyrics on this stuff?
So it's kind of strange, man. It'll happen a lot of different ways, but most of the time I'll just start with whatever the first bar is. Will be something that's like repeating in my head. So like for Shotguns in particular, I remember I wrote Shotgun. It's funny because a lot of these songs are pretty current now, but I wrote Shotguns a pretty long time ago. Like pretty much when we first started working on this project, I had already written Shotguns, and it was relevant then. And I think it's even more relevant now with everything that's going on. But I had just had a long conversation with Sorrow about, a lot of like social and political things. And I was driving home from that, and for whatever reason, I kept wanting to do this. I was trying to figure out a way to do this like Ernest Hemingway bar, which is how it starts off. So I say I make my rhymes earnest, keep delivering shotguns. So that's what I landed on. I was just like, I just really want to do this Ernest Hemingway bar. And then I had all these other things from what I had talked about with Sorrow in mind, and I felt like that was obviously something I really wanted to touch on in a song. So it all just sort of blended together. I like to do references like it's not like I necessarily knew I was going to go to a Harry Potter thing. That started because like the previous line is like I build off the Hemingway one. I say my times turn in Hemingway to literate rock puns. So like a time turner, like in Harry Potter. Yeah. Oh man, I think it's easier. I don't want to just be out here like completely dropping nothing but social and political parts. Like a little bit of fluff. You know what I mean? Like there's an element of like humor and wit to any good hip hop. And if I want to even compete in that realm, I feel like I have to at least try, Well,
I mean, even going to your Back to the Future reference.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's like I was saying, like I was picking up on a lot of the stuff, and maybe as a fun thing when we drop this episode, I'll grab the audio from this. But one night, like two of my friends, one of which I was living with, were just hammered one night, and we decided to try to make a rap song.
Oh,
so.
Nice.
My buddy and I actually listened to a lot of hip hop, so we were like, okay, like he took a song that my roommate and him had written, and then basically put a beat to it, kind of changed the tempo and all that kind of stuff, made the music, and then him and I were like, okay, well, what are we gonna do? And the whole crux of it was like at the time, Aqua Teen Hunger Force was really big. The movie had just come out, and so I was constantly going around screaming, basically sounding like Carl, and we're like, all right, let's do a Carl rap. And we're like, all right, well, what does that sound like? What does that look like lyrically? And so we're like, okay, like let's dissect rap. What is a trope of rap? And we're like, okay, you have to reference like a year or something very current in pop culture right now. So it's really fucking dated like a year later.
It's true, man.
It is. Like, we just started breaking down all these constructs of hip-hop and then kind of put the narrative of Aqua Teen Hunger Force references. Like, I think at one point, I think I was like, who else jerked off to that 2 girls, 1 cup, blah, 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 blah. And then, like, we had Unforgivable as a big thing. So, like, we're like, I think the line was, I live next to a Happy Meal and they're all alive. I meat wad a shake. And then my buddy came in with, like, the waffle fries kind of thing from the Unforgivable. Yeah. So it's like, if you don't know what that waffle fries thing is from, you don't know, but if you do, it's an extra layer to like the references we're putting in there. So it's like there's a lot of that kind of stuff, like I said with the Back to the Future one, where I was like, okay, like that's cool, like Calvin Klein back in 55 at the prom, blah blah blah. Like I was like, all right, Back to the Future, and you've kind of referenced time hopping and so forth in that song as well. So it's just kind of interesting, like for those that have a wide array of references, that you're able to kind of get a little bit more, where someone might read that like at face value and just be like, all right, I guess something happened back in 55 with Calvin Klein, I don't know.
Yeah. That's I think that sometimes because there are times when I feel like I'll go a little bit too far, like on nothing that we've released currently, but songs that I've written and scrapped. It's just like, all right, do I really need to go on for 16 bars about Crash Bandicoot? You know what I mean? Like I don't think we really need this in the world, but who knows? Maybe one day.
What's kind of interesting is the hook on do it for the gram, die for the pick. I know it's kind of tackling a larger issue of basically people blindly following trends and so forth. But what was interesting is, as I kind of listened to the song, and mainly that line, do it for the gram, die for the pick, excuse me, is It reminded me of, I was driving downtown and I was passing a bridge that overgoes the highway, and I saw these two girls, and one of them had gone all the way around to the part that's basically, if she fell, she would fall into the highway traffic. She had climbed all the way around to the other side so her friend could take a photo. And so when you had that line, do it for the gram, die for the pic. And I was thinking about I remember going by and just being like, what the fuck is wrong with these kids? Where they're going to do something like that for a fucking photo for 10 likes.
So the phrase die for the pic, the reason that even came into a song is because that became sort of a little bit of a meme, within the band. And there's a story about how that came. I actually heard someone say that. And so I went to, it was a couple years back. I went to go see Dashboard at the Palladium, I think it was. And there was this girl out front, and she had taken a picture of the marquee that said Dashboard Confessional. And I didn't know, I just met her. I didn't know her. It was my girlfriend's friend, and they were absolutely wasted. I gotta do pleasantries and be like, oh, hey, nice to meet you, all this kind of stuff. And she showed my girlfriend the thing that says the picture that she took. And she was like, oh, wow, that's a really good picture. And this girl just absolutely wrecked, wasted, is like, yeah, man, I'd die for the pic. And she's like, I went out into the street to take this picture. I'll die for the pic. And I was just like, oh my God. To me, it was simultaneously the most vapid and the most profound thing. You know what I mean?
So being a fan of heavy music, this is kind of a fun thing. Obviously Slipknot's first record, there's that line, you can't see California without Marlon Brando's eyes. And so the story goes is some bum was yelling that, and Corey heard him and was just like, okay. And I remember a couple years ago walking downtown and almost something similar, a bum was just they're cutting the town to pieces with their feet. And I was like, I don't know what that means, but I'm jotting that down for something eventually. And it's wild how you can just pull shit from random conversations with people, and they seem like nothing in the moment, but if you're kind of listening, you're like, that's so fucking profound. Can be. Yeah,
exactly. And it's, sometimes shit just sticks like that. It's, it's interesting where will come from.
Is there another example of that maybe has ended up on at least a couple of songs that are out currently?
Nothing that direct. Like I said, the Shotguns one is interesting to me because I was literally just trying to figure out how to flip this Ernest Hemingway thing. And then, all the songs are really personal to me, but as far as an actual direct reference, I think I referenced some conversations I've had with a friend of mine on that. Nothing that clear though.
So when I was looking through just trying to find some interesting stuff maybe about you through the socials, I saw that and I can see it in the background is your Ninja Turtles game.
Oh yeah.
Were you a big arcade dude back in the day?
Of course. Yeah. There's actually obviously you can't go anymore since the lockdown, but there's a couple arcades around here that I still go to a bunch. I'm sure it's probably a little bit hard to find anything of me on social media. I never had social media until 6 months ago. So
yeah, your Instagram's pretty much sparse.
Yeah, I only have an I was kind of forced into it. It was you need to get an Instagram now. All right.
Actually, that brings up an interesting point, though, because one of the episodes we just dropped, actually with Michael from Volumes, we were kind of talking about with a lot of trends, if bands or management or labels or so forth kind of force bands into adopting to new trends, like TikTok or something. And I have wondered if, listening to something like The Nerdist, a lot of people, or even Mark Maron's podcast, you'll hear some people be like, yeah, I don't have social media. And people, Hardwick especially is always like, well, what's that like? Is it so great? People not bogging you down to promote the movie or do this shit. And they're like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I just don't do it. And so you're one of the first that I've actually talked to where you're like, yeah, I kind of was like, I didn't have anything until very recently because someone was like, hey, you probably should get this.
Yeah. For me, it was, I think I deleted my Facebook in 2012 or something like that. And I just never looked back. A lot of obviously I speak with a little bit of vitriol about this kind of stuff on Die for the Pick specifically. I just felt like I saw a lot of really negative trends with social media where it was just so many. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of positive that can come from social media, and I've had a good experience with what little that I use it now. But there's so many people that I've seen in my own life that sort of just compare themselves to what they see online without realizing that, like, it's pretty much just someone's highlight reel and it's really over exaggerated. So someone's going to be like looking at someone's Instagram and while they're at home, like on a Friday night, and be like, oh, I'm not partying in Maui right now. My life sucks. And it's like, this person has terrible times too. I don't know, man. I just really don't like how infatuated people have become with it. Though there's so many great ways to use social media. Like, I've definitely reconnected with people that I haven't talked to in years over the last few months, specifically because I have an Instagram now. I just wish people didn't put so much weight on what they see other people doing on Instagram.
Yeah, I made the mistake the other day. Like, I was having a rough day because I stayed up too late with some friends and my wife, like, drinking and hanging out, and then I had to go to work, and I was like, fuck, I am struggling. It's just a real rough day. And I just put that on Facebook real quick. I was like, man, it's been a real struggle today. And I just didn't think I needed to explain. And then I had so many text messages from people being like, are you okay? What's wrong? And I'm like, nothing. I'm just hungover. And like, that was really it. And then everyone's like, oh, okay. And then, like, I was just like, dude, I'm over this. So I, like, deleted the post. But I was just like, it's good, I guess, to know that people are going to, like, be concerned that, like, if I post something like that, then, and I'm kind of being vague, that maybe there's something more to it. So there's the positive. But the negative is then I had more people blowing me up being like, what the fuck's wrong? And it's like, nothing's wrong. I'm hungover. It's hot. And I don't want to be at work.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of people that'll post stuff like that online just looking for people to be like, what's wrong with you? You know what I mean? They're just looking for attention. So if you're out here just being like, yeah, I'm just kind of having like not that great of a day, boom, you're not even looking for attention. Everyone's going to swarm.
Yeah. Actually, here's a fun question, since the social media has been somewhat recent for you and you've been reconnecting with people. Have you found people that maybe you weren't necessarily close with or whatever that are friending you because of you being in this group with who you're in it with?
I've definitely gotten a little bit more attention from people that I never really talked to anyway, like in high school and stuff like that. Online sending me messages, and I've made the point of, it's interesting because, like, before a couple weeks ago, I probably wouldn't have responded to these people anyway, but now that they're texting me, or now that they're messaging me on Instagram, I have made a point of responding, at least to just be like, hey, what's up? Thanks, or whatever, just so they don't think I'm big timing them. You know what I mean? Because, like, I am the furthest thing from big time, bro. You know what I mean? Like, I've got like 300 followers on my Instagram. Like, I am not a big time dude, right? So I don't want it to come across like, even though I legitimately don't want to talk to these people, I don't want it to come across like, oh, I'm too good for you. It's the optics of it are super strange, and it's like a strange thing to think about in my life.
What other, obviously you, in like your promo photos, you're wearing like a Scary Kid, Scaring Kid shirt. You referenced them earlier. You were just talking about the Misery Signal, stuff like that. Were you ever in any like hardcore bands or like post-hardcore bands from back in the day? Or is this kind of one of your first like bands?
Nothing I would know about. You know what I mean? Like, I was in hardcore bands like in my hometown that never really get out of my hometown, But I love that whole scene. Like, that whole scene in general is what got me to start writing music in the first place, because it's like, I think there's something to be said about the whole DIY aspect of that particular hardcore scene. And I know there's punk rock scenes before that, but I didn't live through that, so I can't really reference it. But if I'm looking at Motley Crue, that just doesn't seem attainable. You know what I mean? Like those dudes are presenting themselves as gods, and it just doesn't seem attainable. But if you're just out here like listening to Under Oath, you're like, I could probably do that. Like those are pretty normal guys. I could do that. That looks like fun, and they're playing these smaller shows. You talk to them before the show. It just seemed like way more attainable, and I think there's probably a lot of music that's happening now specifically because of that scene, and kids thinking like, hey, I can do this. I can just like start a MySpace and record something on my Windows audio recorder and be famous.
Well, I think the other thing too that can't be understated too is Jersey around that time of like the late 90s, early 2000s was really kind of coming into its own, and really the East Coast with, you know, Massachusetts and so forth, of kind of putting their stamp on music. I think Jersey had Thursday, My Chem, you even had like God Forbid, and then you had Steve Ebbets at the time, you know, was working down there at Tracks East.
For sure.
So I mean, like, and Dead Guy obviously, and all those kind of bands too, but like it's
No 12 Looks Like You, Jersey.
So I mean, I think you know, that's kind of the interesting thing is I think some people might go, oh, Jersey, like what's really there, you know, because people think New York or whatever around you, but I think, you know, especially in that scene, Jersey had a pretty big stamp on the scene in the early days.
Well, yeah, I mean, Ferret was based out in New Jersey, and I mean there was so much great shit coming out on Ferret. Yeah, man, and exactly, My Chemical Romance. They're doing stadiums now. It's ridiculous.
Last couple of questions for you. With obviously this being Volume 1, and I know you guys have been teasing that Volume 2 is going to be released soon, is the intention, I should say, to release a couple of songs, kind of give people time to digest everything, really kind of get into a deep dive on it, and then release something new to kind of keep the ADD nature of fans and music fans like always wanting the new thing or something new? And as such, how many of these are there, and or will these all become a collection that will become a full length over time?
So for the last part, I would love to make them into a collection eventually. As of right now, we have about 12 songs ready to go. We've got like 4 volumes set up. Now, I don't know necessarily when we're going to release those or what even the order of those songs is going to be. We've got a couple ideas. But the idea behind that whole thing is pretty much what you're hinting at, is that, like, look, man, we're a new band. We can't just drop 12 songs right now and expect everyone to listen to and care about all 12 songs, right? So we're constantly writing and we're constantly going. And I think the model of let's just release a little bit of music at a time and pretty consistently will at least keep people's attention more than it would, you know, if we just dropped all those songs at once. Plus, we're constantly writing, we're constantly recording. I mean, I'm going to be in the studio in like an hour, and we're just going to get back to writing and recording. We're still going. So we've got a lot of volumes already laid out, and it's not like we're stopping, right? So I'd love to make it all an album at some point, but we kind of got to, you know, we'll see how it goes. Who knows if we'll just release them individually or make an entire new album. Who knows?
Like, I feel like this first volume, kind of lyrically, there's a theme kind of represented throughout the 3 songs. Is that what's kind of tying each volume together? Is sort of an overall, maybe even a loose lyrical theme, or is it just kind of what is kind of how are you putting these together? That's
certainly how I feel about it. There's a couple things that go into it, though. We not only do we want the songs to connect with each other on like a content level, like lyrical wise, we need to have them flow together well. You know, even if it's just 3 songs, the order of those matters. Like it makes me happy that you were like, it seems like there's similar things going on in the first song as the last song. You know what I mean? Like all that is something that we're considering while we're making it. So content wise, I've been writing a lot about just sort of, if I had to sum up Volume 1, it's just like what it is to even be in America right now. You know what I mean? There's a lot of social and political unrest that, without getting like too heavy about it, it would be almost asinine not to mention it, you know?
Right.
And I touch on that a lot. Maybe not as much as on Volume 1 is pretty heavy-handed, but I touch on that a lot in the other stuff as well. But the way we tie them together has a lot to do with content and music together.
Yeah, it's just kind of interesting because, like, you know, you look at a band like Crosses, you know, they did that with their first couple EPs, and then by the time the third one came out, it made the full Crosses record. Even now recently with Acacia Strain, you know, they dropped Decay, a collection of 5 7-inches, and then they put it together for what would become Slow Decay with the other 2 songs that they didn't release at the time. So you're kind of starting to see people start to do that, like where it's like, here's a small collection, and then that small collection will then be repackaged as one entire like unit.
You sort of have to these days. I mean, it really is. It really is almost the only logical option with how fast everyone's moving through things. You know.
What is obviously in these times right now, you can't really do live anything other than like a live stream.
Yeah.
Have you guys talked about what this project is going to look like in a live setting?
Yeah. I mean, we rehearse stuff live. There's definitely a couple different ideas floating around about how we want to particularly go about it. We have it pretty well hammered out with what we've rehearsed so far and what we want to do. And I am itching to bring this live. I mean, obviously the entire intent of this was, we'll put the music out and then we'll tour it and it'll get even bigger that way. But with everything going on, with Corona and all that, we had to slow that down. And we were even supposed to release the music months before we did. But we had to sort of switch up our plans a little bit. So as soon as we can go live, we will go live. And I cannot wait to do that.
What does that look like with it being a 3-piece? Are you going to kind of go just the three of you? You're going to bring in ancillary musicians to kind of create a fuller sound, maybe even an extra, I don't want to call it a hype man.
So there's definitely, it's achievable with the three of us on the record, but there's definitely some extra hands that we need to play it all live. And I wouldn't really want to. We've got a lot of ideas for that. I don't really want to spoil the surprise of it. But there's a lot of stuff that I'm excited about that does involve, maybe bringing in some extra hands for that. That I think the fans are really going to like.
Who is someone that you would like to collaborate with?
Oh my God, my absolute dream. My favorite rapper is this guy named POS. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's out of Minneapolis. He's from Doomtree. He's got an album called Never Better that is bar none the best hip hop album I ever heard in my life. I listen to it all the time for inspiration. Like if I know I'm going to track vocals that day, I'm like listening to Never Better on the way to the studio. I am dying to work with that guy. I really, really want to. I would love to get a verse from him. I think it would be awesome. He's super lyrical, and I don't know, man. He's so intense. Absolute favorite rapper. If POS ever sees this, get at me.
I think it's been interesting. NF has been popping up on my radar a lot in the last 6 months.
Oh yeah. He's
someone that I was never really aware of, kind of knew the name but never checked him out. And then after he came here to town, and my co-host who runs a metal podcast was like, I know it was kind of weird for us, but we know we're doing a Christian rapper. And then so finally I was like, all right, I'll check this out. And then I was like, holy shit, I've been sleeping on this.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
And I guess lastly, you only have one form of social, but where can people find you or the band online?
Yeah, so me personally, I have an Instagram. It's Ray Hawthorne with an underscore after it, but it's easier to find me, I guess, on the North Kingsley socials. I'm just one of the guys that North Kingsley is following. So I'd love everyone to check out North Kingsley. We really put our whole heart into this project, and it would mean the world to me if you guys listen to it.
Looking forward to volume 2, 3, and 4, and kind of dissecting more of your references and all that kind of stuff. And maybe when some more of those and more music's out, maybe do another one and catch up with that and maybe talk
for sure anytime
or something.
Yeah.
So that was my chat with Ray Hawthorne, vocalist of North Kingsley. Again, their first EP, volume 1, is out now. Hopefully, by the time this comes out, because it'll probably be about another week or so before you actually hear this. As of when we're recording, no news really has been issued about when Volume 2 will be coming out. I'm hoping, it was kind of interesting, Ray kind of hinted at that maybe these separate volumes are separated by a theme. And I'm not entirely sure if the theme is the lyrics, if it's the music, if it's the vibe or whatever, but I'm interested to see if they go in some other direction with this next volume.
Yeah, it should be interesting. I mean, I would actually kind of just like to hear them expand a little bit more off of, because Volume 1 was, I think, 3 songs?
Yep.
So, I mean, I would almost like to hear expansion of that, but, to maybe carry a similar vibe all the way through. But I'm not sure what to expect. The thing that I actually found myself enjoying more than I thought that I would were just basically all the pop culture references that were thrown to each of the songs. And yeah, I mean, you guys talked about that, pretty extensively in the interview. But it's an interesting thing because I feel like the tone of the music stays ultra serious.
Oh yeah.
But still has all these super fun pop culture references in it. So it's how he's able to deliver that stuff without adding the wink, is very interesting to me. I don't really ever heard anybody do that. I feel like people just pick a vibe, and if the vibe is fun, then they just stick with fun. But if the vibe's serious, then the lyrics are usually just so downtrodden that you can't really get behind them. So these were fun, serious.
Yeah, I mean, and this is where this episode specifically gets kind of interesting because it's this is definitely in my wheelhouse, being someone that indirectly grew up on a lot of hip hop and has maintained my love of the genre for so long that, you know, I've kind of, you know, like I'm at the point with it at times where it's like, you know, there's the stuff that, like, you know, more my wife listens to and that I've kind of been raised around now, you know, of the newer stuff where it's like silly lyrics, kind of like, yeah, there's, you know, a theme to it or whatever, but like the lyrics are kind of more based around just a hook that you repeat ad nauseum. And, you know, like a running joke I've had, you know, is like, I never realized when 3 6 Mafia came out, like all those, like a decade and a half ago, roughly, that basically they would invent the kind of rap that we're listening to now, where it's just like, can you tell me the verse? Not really. Can you tell me the hook? Oh, yeah, the hook is slob on my knob, like corn on the cob. Like, you know, that's the hook.
Right.
And it's like now, you know, and for everyone, you know, to kind of timestamp this as far as what's happening culturally, it's funny to see everyone get all up in arms right now over WAP, you know, and I'm just kind of like, dude, like, you know, a friend of the show is who I won't mention, but, you know, he'll know who he is, you know, that knows Dan as well. You know, he sent me a thing and he was just like, yo, like, can you believe this shit's like, you know, passing his music or whatever? And I was like, well, I mean, how are you getting mad at this? But like when 2 Live Crew came out with Me So Horny and shit like that, like that was okay. Or, you know, there's so many songs over the last 20 years in hip hop and even rock and whatever that are so much more misogynistic and shit, and we're fine with that. But as soon as some women come out and they're like, yeah, I want you to fuck me real good, like, oh my God, I'm blushing and I can't believe this quote unquote music is passing as such or whatever. And they're like, let the girls have their fun, man. Like, you know, guys have been doing it long enough. Like, someone else can have some fun too. And I kind of feel like that also applies to North Kingsley, where it's like, you know, you might get some people who are like, man, Shabo needs to go to his, you know, metal roots and all this kind of shit. And it's like, dude grew up in California, like a melting pot of influences and styles and genres and so forth. And obviously so did Ray. I mean, that was the biggest takeaway for me. The fact that, you know, I'm talking to this dude and based on his flow and his lyrics and a lot of his cadences and shit, I'm thinking like, okay, like I'm picking out some of these things. This must be someone you're into. Oh, you're from the East Coast. Like, obviously that makes more sense now. And then he's like, yo, I'm big into metalcore and screamo and shit like that. And I'm like, oh, fuck, okay, like, was not expecting that.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can't really judge a book by its cover, you know, and I think as generic as that is, I mean, it's true. And I, you know, even I've struggled with a lot of the time, even sometimes going into certain interviews, like having this expectation that we're going to talk about this thing, but then it turns into like, kind of more of like, no, they have this interest and I just assume that they had this interest. Like, I might ask what I think is going to be my conversation starter question and they're just like, oh yeah, I mean, that's cool. And then, you know, then you kind of have to like dig a little bit deeper and find things that, you know, find something, you know, some sort of common ground, something they're actually interested in talking about. And it, you know, so I guess the moral of the story is, you know, just don't ever assume anything about anyone. And when you're interview enough to where you can actually get kind of a better register of what that person is actually into and what they find interesting.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. You know, something we had kind of talked about in the episode that we've already dropped with basically Josh from Shiner, you know, some of these episodes we do where maybe you don't know who the person is or you don't think you're going to like the band. I hope this is something that somebody who maybe listens to this, who hasn't checked out, you know, North Kingsley, that you're going to find something in it that you like, or maybe it's going to expose you to a few different ideas, maybe like that you're not familiar with because you know, in some instances, maybe the wordplay is a little too fast and you're not able to keep up. So, you know, like when we're talking about some of these references, like maybe that is something you're into, and then when you finally catch those, it becomes a little easier for you to start understanding what he's saying. And I think that's kind of, you know, the funny thing about, you know, metal typically is, you know, a lot of people are always like, how can you understand what they're saying? And you're like, oh, it's not that hard. And to me, the same thing kind of applies to rap. You know, there are a lot of people who are like, they speak so fast, how are you able to catch everything? And it's like, well,
because I listen to metal also.
Yeah, well, it's like, you know, there's the surface level, like where a lot, you know, I'm kind of slightly behind what he's saying typically on the first listen, but then you catch something and you're like, oh, that's clever, and then you go back and you listen again, you're like, oh shit, okay, like now I see where the setup for this was, or here's the callback to this, and you start piecing things together. And I think maybe that's kind of the interesting thing about something like this, and I guess even, you know, some of the metal that we listen to is, it's not for those who are looking for something surface level. By the time you get to the second chorus, you already know what you're singing it along. It's supposed to be an earworm. This is something for people who love music and want to take a deeper dive and find something within the music, an actual message and having relevancy within the content. And I definitely think North Kingsley is a band and a group that we should all be looking at. I'm really hoping that, whenever touring comes back, we'll be able to see these guys start touring, because I would really like to see what this looks like live, because I can, in theory, imagine some interesting production can be done with it, because you only have 3 guys, maybe a couple more if you're doing live instrumentation or whatever, but I feel like maybe the budget can be shifted. Instead of having to pay a whole bunch of people to be on stage, you can kind of go back into the production, and that has me kind of excited to see what they would do for some of the more narrative-based lyrics that they have.
Yeah, it should be interesting, and like I said, I would really like to hear a little bit more of an expansion on that sound, because I feel like the 3 songs were not enough yet to kind of whet my appetite as far as like wanting to have something that I could dig into as well as just listen to for enjoyment.
Yep. And, kind of speaking to that, let's wrap up this episode. I don't want to overstay our welcome. So if you would like to keep up with Ray and North Kingsley, you can find North Kingsley on Facebook at North Kingsley Official, Instagram at North Kingsley, Twitter at North_Kingsley, and Ray can be found on Instagram at Ray Hawthorne. I believe it's an underscore in his name. I'm not entirely sure now that I'm looking at it. Whatever, that's the only form of social media he has. That was kind of a fun little segue we went down, but I'm not going to get back into that. If you would like to keep up with all things North Kingsley, just simply enough, northkingsley.com. Very simple. Dan will tell you where simply he can be found online as well.
Oh, I can be simply found all over the place, man. I'm on Facebook under Daniel Terry, Twitter at DiscussMetalDan. You can email me at discussmetaldan@gmail.com. I've also started a Twitch account recently, twitch.tv. I guess you just search for Discuss Metal Dan. And I stream 2 times a week, usually playing old school first-person shooters like Doom and Quake and stuff like that. It's been a lot of fun just getting to hang out with people doing that. And it's kind of like how I relax. So I just decided to start sharing my relaxing with people. So I stream on Monday nights and Thursday nights at 10:30 p.m. Central Time. So it's definitely for the, no pun intended, all of the night owls out there.
And if you would like to keep up with this podcast, simply enough, go to BREWspeakPod.com. Everything you need to know about us and where we can be found is there. It is a central hub for a reason. And you can also find our sponsors, which we're going to blow through these really quickly. Again, everything is in the show notes, so if you ever have an issue with keeping up with us or where to find things, just simply look down and whatever you're listening to this on, and it's all there. I take the time and do all that for you. But starting off with The Bean Bastard, go to thebeanbastard.com, Facebook and Instagram at The Bean Bastard. They actually have a store now, so if you would actually like to go to the store and you live in the Buffalo, New York area, I don't think it's technically open yet, but we'll be opening soon. Really awesome to see how much and how far this company has progressed since basically we've had them on. Really proud of those dudes for achieving a lot of success and following their dreams. And basically, something, we obviously talk about beer and so forth, but those guys are, sober and have turned, basically what could have been a downfall of, their drinking and so forth, and turned all of that into positive momentum and all that kind of stuff. And just a really great story. And maybe we need to have Nick and the guys come back on and basically tell more of that story about the adversities and so forth they've gone through and building up their business. On Point Pomade, keep your beard and hair looking on point. Go to onpointpomade.com, use our code BSP15, get 15% off your total purchase order. Tell them that we're sending you, because we want you to look good. I mean, it's that time of year. You're going to have to start taking family photos again, so you gotta look good. And last but not least, rockabilly.com. Head on over to rockabilly.com, where they have over 500,000 items on their online store, from pop culture items such as, Stranger Things, House. I think I just saw a Trick or Treat, that movie from 10 years ago at this point. Every band pretty much we've had on this show, go over there. There's got to be something that you're going to like. I'm not going to put an official stamp on that claim, but I would be willing to bet if you are into anything from this podcast, you'll find something over there you like. The best thing, too, is everything's officially licensed through the bands, so you never have to worry about any bootleg stuff like you'd find on eBay, or the quality of the products not being good. You know that your money's being well spent, and some of that money goes back to the bands as well. So, I mean, mean, you're supporting everybody. It's an all-win situation, basically. And, you don't have very many opportunities for those nowadays. So, that's great. Want to thank our sponsors for supporting us during these times. And we want to thank you for supporting us as well, and keep listening. So thank you for all of that. And for the Brewtally Speaking Podcast, I am John.
And I am Dan.
And we'll talk to you all next time.
Going now? Using signals? Kind of like misery signals? Yeah, you like that? Misery signals, that's metal for the kids, right? Right, they like that, they get it? Yeah, saw them back on that 84 tour with Brian Adams at the Meadowlands. Yeah, that shit was awesome. Yeah, how you doing? Your mother's a whore. Yeah, I call my dick a mayor, because it's the city, it runs the whole place. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? I treat it like a mayor, it's like the boss. Not Bruce Springsteen, because he doesn't play piano. First name's Carl, my last name's Smith. But Tyler Nanalewski is actually it. So I lied to you. But that's okay. Joke's on you, because my dick's so huge. It's like 16 anacondas escaped from the zoo. And my house is blue, just like my balls. But the prostitute don't like the smell of my car. But, no, seriously, I lied. I like prostitutes. They help me through some hard times. Get it? Hard times! When I say doomsday, you say whore. Doomsday! Whore! Doomsday! Whore! When I say insane flag, you say porn. Insane flag! Whore! Insane flag! Whore! When I say doomsday, you say whore. Doomsday! Whore! Doomsday! Whore! When I say insane flag, you say porn. Insane flag! Whore! Insane flag! Yeah, that one goes out to you, Dusty Gonzagas at the Boom Hut. Here we go, second round. I rolled to wicked on 20-inch rims, and my house has a pool full of whoopies. Get it? I live next to a Happy Meal and they're all alive. A meat, water shake, and some waffles. I made a shirt for you just without the R. Women get hypnotized by the rims of my car. And I'm deep into it now, cause I'm a bum. But no, I love you too. Gotta go, Mom. When I say doomsday, you say whore. Doomsday. Whore. Doomsday. Whore. When I say insane flag, you say porn. Insane flag. Whore. Insane flag. Whore. When I say doomsday, you say whore. Doomsday. Whore. Doomsday. Whore. When I say insane flag, you say porn. Insane flag. Whore. Insane flag. Whore. Yeah, Prime Man, what do you think of that? That's back in the day kind of stuff, you know what I'm saying? Rip off the song and I'll rip off your dick. Just call me Wahlburger, I got a house full of pricks. The food shape, and then my neighbors. Don't worry, I water their lawn with the fruits of my labors. I wear sweatpants when I get lap dances. Are they off right now? You got 1 in 3 chances. Who else but him and rape my shapes glove pump? Who else jerked off to that 2 girls, 1 cup? When I say doomsday, you say whore. Doomsday! Whore! Doomsday! Whore! When I say insane flex, you say porn! Insane flag! Whore! Insane flag! Whore! When I say doomsday, you say whore! Doomsday! Whore! Doomsday! Whore! When I say insane flex, you say porn! Insane flag! Whore! Insane flag! Whore! No, seriously, I can't hear this shit out of my left ear. I got shot back in '88. Went to the Wicked concert, that shit was wicked awesome, yeah, I was in front row, yeah, yeah, well, wait, is the beat there? I don't know, I can't hear it, no? I'm looking at you guys in the booth, come on!
Camilla reunion show should be quite a blast. Maybe you should come out Black Friday. Or not.
Fucking sucked. Oh, that fucking sucked. Shao Kahn, what'd you think?
That was pathetic.
Yeah. Yeah. Coach, what'd you think?
Fucking embarrassing!
Okay. Okay. I mean, I knew it was gonna fucking suck, but I think those guys were a little rude. Austin Powers?
How about new?
Okay, I thought we were gonna get the Austin Powers vote. We did not. John, use that for your podcast. It fucking sucks. But you knew what you were getting into. It's your own fault. it will result in less listens. You're going to see a decline in listeners if you start the show with that. You're going to see 30 seconds in, the number will plummet. And I will be there at the bottom of the plummet saying, I fucking told you, don't use this fucking riff. It sucks. But it's yours.